Hey ladies, hello. So, we're starting a new discussion in our group, and actually, I am pretty excited about it. We are going to talk about self regulation. So, it starts off with I started a discussion earlier, self regulation versus self control. And they sound similar, they are connected, but different. And when we get into self-regulation, I think it's going to be like, okay. So I am going to essentially go through a book just to help me stay on track and to make sure I cover the important stuff. I'm pretty good about recapping on topics, but I want to give you, the most research-based perspective on the topic, and then we'll kind of get into more practical application. But I think the book does justice to that as well. So this is the book, okay? Self-Reg by Stuart Shanker, Dr. Stuart Shanker, okay, with Teresa Barker. And actually, most of the evenings when I jump on, I do keep it pretty short and sweet. So we'll cover some of the book. You are more than welcome to follow along if you want to get your own copy. And if not, no worries. I think us really just talking through it is going to be helpful enough, because if you or your child have issues with self-regulation, this will at least give you a broad, should I say, foundation, and you can always do more research. But I really just want to introduce the topic to the group. I think it's eye-opening. Okay, so let's just start. Like, you're like, okay, well, what is self-reg? Well, let's just start. I'll try to start by differentiating, okay, self-control versus self-regulation. So when we say self-control, right, we're pretty much meaning our impulse control. Can we hold our tongue so we don't say something we shouldn't? Can we keep our hands to ourselves, right? But if somebody says, well, how do you improve your self-control? Most of us are like, well, you just hope you do it okay. Or some people say you just have to practice, just keep finding yourself in situations that require you to exercise this self-control. So there really isn't a clear process for you to improve impulse control. But when we talk about self-regulation, there is a clear process, and essentially it's a process that is based around managing your stress. And so it's a 5-step process that helps you to identify the stressors and kind of walk yourself through a process of handling or managing the stress, which in turn gives you greater impulse control. So it's really interesting. Okay, so that's my best explanation for you. Okay, the next point, how our bodies handle stress. Okay, so one, a threat is sense, right? So we are no longer, in days where we're living in tents or cabins. We don't have a lot of the same threats that many generations before us had. However, our responses to threats are still the same. Okay, so what I mean by that is I could, my body could respond to a threat through a video game just the same as it will respond if I were in the middle of the woods and I hear gunshots, right? One is real, one is not, but my body can't tell the difference. It just knows that there's a threat. So then my alarm system goes off, right? Now we're in fight or flight, right? You've heard that before, fight or flight. All these hormones now are being cranked out of our bodies to help us to figure out how to survive, how to keep ourselves safe. So in the process of our bodies trying to conserve the energy to save us, to keep us alive, it shuts down other functions. And some of those functions that get shut down include digestion. They include reflective thinking, like higher level processes, right? Where we can think reflectively, where we can empathize, where we can control impulses. For some people, hearing, right? Certain frequencies get shut down in that fight or flight process. Blood flow to the capillaries. I mean, there's a whole process here that your body is going through over what could be really not even a real threat, right? But your body is still going to go through all these processes. It's going to ramp up certain parts of your body, and it's going to tone down other parts to use that energy for more important things. So on a day-to-day basis, our body is constantly going through a process of arousal, and then I guess goes up in arousal and down. So up, is when we would feel hyper, our body's waking up from sleep. That would be an arousal process. And then when it's time to go to bed, right, our body brings us down and quiets us for sleep. So all throughout the day, this is just a normal process, right? Our body's getting us excited for certain things, and it's calming us down for certain things. Getting us excited, calming us down, up, down, up, down, up, down. And it's doing this all day on the regular. Okay. And so then there's different types of responses to the different stimulus that we experience. So the first one would be like social engagement, right? Different things happen. We would then want to engage with each other socially to try to meet the demands of whatever is going on. The next would be the fight or flight, right? Which is a form of arousal, right? Up, 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 ready, what. The next would be freeze. And some of us, know what this looks like, where we slow down, we stop as a result of stress. Things just kind of like. And then the last reaction is dissociation, almost kind of like out of body. It's almost like your body's separating itself from the situation, but that's really not a big part of what we're talking about here. I mean, disassociation is more for traumatic experiences. So we will focus most on the social engagement, the fight or flight, and the freeze, right? Where the arousal is going up or down from the different perceived threats that our body is experiencing, or just the perceived needs based on the different environmental, social stimuli that we're getting. So what do these look like? Okay. What do these different reactions look like? Y'all, bear with me. It's evening time. It's close to bedtime. I was like, I'm just gonna bring my tea. I'll try not to be a super, but I do kind of soup. Okay. All right. So I'm not trying to make your head all dizzy. I'm trying to keep the basic scientific setup clear, because a lot of these terms I'm sure you've already heard about, and you're trying to figure out, okay, what parts of this do I really need to know? Okay, well, this part is important. What does some of this arousal look like in children or in adults, right? It could look like them being impulsive, aggressive, to themselves, to others. It could look like them being zoned out. It can look like hyperactivity, where the person or child just cannot calm down. And unfortunately, the harder a person who is in one of these, way up, maybe way down, reactions to the stress, the harder they try to fight against it, the harder it can become for them to manage it. So it's almost like they can stress themselves more by trying to control what's going on. Okay. So like I said, all throughout the day, we're going through this up and down, right? This arousal, and then we come down. We go up, we come down. We go up, we come down throughout the day. And this is just our brain's way of helping us to respond to what's going on around us. The problem comes, right, when we get stuck. Because our body is just responding to the natural stressors in our environment, but we can get stuck in what's considered a stress cycle. So self-regulation essentially teaches us how to recognize, right, how to recognize these impulses, and then how to interrupt that stress cycle. So I thought it was very interesting. I feel like this introduction to self-regulation is very interesting because for example, I know, I have three school-age children now. And whenever they tell me about school, it's always that one or two students who every day are getting in trouble, are acting out, or, usually they're saying things that are inappropriate, or they're bouncing off the walls, taking attention away from where it should be. Sometimes it is them zoning out, and the kids will be, telling me about these stories about these children. And in all likelihood, these children would benefit from somebody helping them through the process of self-regulation, okay? Because they are getting stuck, right? Either way up or way down, right? The way up in their body's reaction to stress is them being hyper, right? And being impulsive or being aggressive. And then the opposite could be a child who is, always kind of in their own world. They're not able to stay focused. They have difficulty engaging and interacting with the other students. So when I thought about those students and I think about my own children, there is still some correlation because sometimes I see my children in similar light. It's not all the time, but I do notice when they get way up, right, or get stuck way down. Different situations, I guess different stress, different times of day, which is environmental. And it's a topic that I wanted to talk about because as moms, aunts, grandmas, godmoms, it's important that, one, we are able to see and pay attention to when this happens, because one of the difficulties that children have is that they usually have a hard time articulating, telling you what's going on inside of them, sharing their feelings. And so really it's up to the caring adults to be able to identify, to see it, right, to pick up on the cues, and then to step in to help with that regulation system. Now, there are some warning signs, and I'm going to make a parallel here for adults, because for adults, I mean, a lot of adults have a hard time articulating their feelings as well, especially if you didn't grow up in a home where you talk about your feelings, right? Then you go from being a child that can't articulate your feelings to just being an adult that can't articulate your feelings. There often really isn't a clear bridge that gaps you if you don't develop those skills. So there are plenty of adults that have similar situations where they can be overwhelmed and stay in this stress cycle. That's what it is. You get stuck